Okay, so again, if you chose this one by Tom Thompson, his iconic tree is in here. He's got a lot of trees that look like this, the windswept pine in a lot of his paintings. So if this one was your favorite and you chose to work with it, definitely look up more of Tom Thompson. You'll really like his other pieces. This one was called The West Wind. He did this in early 1917. And again, we just noted that there is a lot of violet being used. You could note violet or purple. I'm good with either or. Both terms refer to the same hue. Okay, and we also noticed by carefully studying this that there was a lot of pops of gold and yellow in here, and that touch of yellow makes the purple pop more. Okay, and we can confirm that yellow and violet are opposites on the color wheel, so they're complementary. So there is a strong use of complementary color scheme to make this picture more interesting to look at in terms of the element of color. Okay, if you look really closely at the silhouette of his tree, you can even see that it's pulling on a black silhouette of a tree, but it's kind of off black, almost like off white, right? It's black with like a hint of a color. And the stem of the tree has a strong reddish undertone, and the leaves, if you look really closely at this painting, have almost like a green undertone to them, which again is just the use of a complementary pair to make it pop a bit. And the last one that I did not discuss in this video was, again, Arthur Lismer. This is another one by him, Isle of Spruce. So if you liked Lismer's pieces, maybe look up more of him, Lismer. And again, we noted that this piece feels very cool and warm, right? There's a warm side to the color wheel, traditionally reds, oranges, yellows, and then violets, blues to greens are kind of traditionally noted to be cooler tones. Here we've got a play between cool and warm, okay? Regardless, we can also see that the yellows, the oranges, and the greens used dominantly in this piece are still right beside each other. So it does have a bit of an analogous feel to it, okay? It's got the strong kind of warm fall vibes, but there's also some cooler colors in here. The pops of brighter warm colors definitely emphasize certain parts of the picture and kind of draw your eyes into this island area. Okay, and I believe that is all of our options. Hopefully I got all of them, just for the sake of taking them up together. Okay, and at this point what we're going to do is, again, we're going to go back to our original cutout, and we're going to be pasting it or adhering it to canvas board this time, okay, as opposed to watercolor paper, because this semester we are working with acrylics instead. So with watercolor paints, we mix a lot of water into the paints to turn them into washes, and the best thing to adhere a wash to is a very thick paper. So before, we used to use watercolor paper, which allows the water to kind of sink in, absorb, and dry as you go. Whereas the acrylics, the paint naturally dries very quickly, right? So you want to work quickly with it. But again, we want something a bit more sturdier, like primed canvas, to adhere it to, okay? So we glued our image that we chose to work with of the original painting in the center of our canvas. If you guys are working from home, you want to make sure that all your corners are glued down. What I like to do is turn it over and just give the back of it a good rub to make sure that it's nice and flatly adhered and that nothing is sticking up, right? And the first step towards trying to continue the image off of the original frame, okay, is to take note of where things meet the edge of your frame. So if you look back to your sketchbook illustration or your thumbnail sketch in your sketchbook, you probably already made note of things that are touching the edge of the frame, like the clouds, these red clouds in mine, the long ones in the center come out. The rocks get cut off here, so the edge of the rock is touching the edge of the frame. That background silhouette of dark trees, and so on. Okay, so I'm taking note of these things, and what I want to do with my pencil, and you're going to lightly do with your pencil too, is just kind of continue them off the page so that you don't forget about them. Because that's part of the drawing that needs to be there, and then what continues off of that is completely up to you. The continuation of your painting should look natural, though. It should look like the artist originally did it. You don't want to introduce any new elements, new shapes, new colors, new objects. You want to kind of run with the feel of the existing piece. Okay, and then I'm going to continue. At this point, I'm going to stop my video and just continue to draw what comes to mind. You can be as creative as possible. Like I showed you before, I've had students that wanted to continue the bed of rocks. This island was all rocks down here. Some people tapered the rocks off and just did kind of a small floating island of rocks and decided to continue with lake water around here. Some people continued the rocks onto like a grassy area. Some people decided to make a bundle of clouds and go back to the sky. Some people decided to have the clouds bundle into like a really thick overhang of gray clouds up here. It's completely up to you with how you want to finish off the painting, so long as there is no disconnect between something touching the edge of here and then not being continued. For instance, if I ignored that this rock was here and I just decided to make this all water, you'd be staring at this painting going, what's going on? Why does this rock end so abruptly? Okay, and then turn into water. That doesn't make sense. We need to at least finish this rock off, okay, in order to continue with a body of water. Okay, so make sure that your continuation makes sense. Yesterday, I used a different piece as my exemplar. Yesterday, I used A.Y. Jackson's The Winter Road in Quebec, and I got this far with the students, okay, but here I kind of sketched the continuation of the hills in the background, decided to continue with some of the Rocky Mountains in the background, took note of the hydro lines, okay, coming into my foreground, took note of the trail, looks like kind of like a snowmobile trail, okay, kind of widening in the foreground, and so on, the bumpy hills moving outwards, okay. So again, you're going to end up with whatever it is that you creatively come up with for the extension. Just make sure that everything that was cut off in the original frame is continued, okay? And I'm going to give everybody like 15 minutes to relax and continue their illustration on the canvas paper using pencil and being really light with the pencil. If you don't like what you did, you can easily erase it if you keep your pencil very light. And later on when we go over it with paint, it's easier to lock in if you keep your pencil work light. Questions?
Can I see the example of this one again?
Yeah, you can see the example of that one again. Again, this is student work previously done, so it's not the be-all end-all, it's just what the student came up with. Okay, so notice they introduced this cloud in, but their cloud has the same shape as these clouds. It's not a big, fluffy, curvy cloud. It's a nice swoop, a nice organic, lengthened shape here, and they continue to make their other clouds the same. The hills too, take note, they took note of what the strong shape of these hills were, and they continued to run with that shape. I also like that this student was really careful, and they noticed the small bit of reflected light on the clouds, right? Notice any clouds that they brought in themselves had that same reflection on them, okay? If you look at this work from a distance, it's very, very hard to tell that there is even something taped in the center of it. Really good job camouflaging, okay? Later, we're going to talk about color matching. The color matching isn't always perfect, but you want to get it as close as possible, okay? So the idea is if someone in your family, while you're working on this at home, can take this painting, walk to the opposite side of the room, and prop it up, and you're looking at it, you want it to be very difficult to tell that there's actually a cutout in here. You want it to kind of blend in and camouflage as best as you can. But we're gonna get to the color matching in a later video. For now, I just want you guys to focus on relaxing and taking note of what you see, shapes, lines, textures, and having that inspire the rest of this space. So you wanna fill your negative space with some positive imagery, but keeping to being influenced by the shapes and the lines and the colors that you actually see. Don't come up with anything new. Otherwise, there'll be too much of a stark contrast and you'll be able to tell that you did this and not this, okay?